The morning sun peeked through the clouds as David Johnson checked his reflection one last time in his car's rearview mirror. He straightened his blue tie and took a deep breath. Today was important, maybe the most important day for his business since he'd started it 15 years ago. David had built his construction company from nothing. Starting with just himself and a pickup truck, he now employed 27 people from the community. Many of them had struggled to find work before he gave them a chance. Today, he was ready to take the next big step. The folder on the passenger seat contained his business plan, financial statements from the last 5 years, and projections for the future. He'd stayed up late many nights working on these documents, making sure every number was right, every plan was solid. The bank loan would help him buy new equipment and hire 15 more workers. This wasn't just about making more money, it was about creating opportunities for people who needed them. At 9:40 a.m., David walked into Riverview Community Bank 20 minutes early for his appointment. The bank lobby gleamed with marble floors and dark wood. Soft music played in the background. It smelled like linen polish and money. "Good morning," he said to the receptionist, a thin woman with glasses perched on her nose. "I have a 10 a.m. appointment with Ms. Winters." The receptionist looked up from her computer. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Your name, sir?" "David Johnson. I'm here about a business loan for Johnson Construction." She typed something into her computer. "Yes, I see your appointment. Ms. Winters is currently in a meeting. Please have a seat, and she'll be with you shortly." David nodded and settled into one of the leather chairs in the waiting area. He opened his folder one more time, reviewing the numbers he already knew by heart. He felt confident. His business had grown steadily, he had never missed a loan payment, and his credit score was excellent. There was no reason for the bank to say no. A family walked in, a husband, wife, and teenage daughter. They arrived after David but were quickly greeted and led to an office. David checked his watch. 10:05 a.m. He wasn't worried yet. Meetings sometimes ran long. By 10:20, 2 more people had come in after him and been helped before him. David approached the reception desk again. "Excuse me, I'm still waiting for my appointment with Ms. Winters." "She's still unavailable," the receptionist said without looking up. "Please continue waiting." David returned to his seat. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick message to his site manager, "Meeting running late. Keep things moving at the Wilson project." At 10:45, a man in an expensive-looking suit walked in, laughing loudly on his phone. The receptionist immediately brightened. "Good morning, Mr. Peterson. Ms. Winters mentioned you were coming in. Let me take you back right away." Through the glass wall of a nearby office, David could see a woman he assumed was Ms. Winters. She didn't appear to be in any meeting. She was at her desk, typing at her computer. By 11:00 a.m., David had watched 5 people come and go while he continued to wait. With each passing minute, the knot in his stomach grew tighter. This wasn't his first time experiencing this kind of treatment. He recognized the pattern. The fake smiles, the endless wait, the others who came after him but were helped first. An older woman sitting nearby gave him a sympathetic look. "Been waiting long?" she asked. "An hour now," David replied. "For a scheduled appointment." She shook her head slightly but said nothing more. David took another deep breath and reminded himself why he was here. This loan wasn't just for him. It was for the families of the people who worked for him, and for those who would join his team when the business expanded. He thought about his own family, his wife who had believed in him from the beginning, and his children who looked up to him. He wouldn't let this treatment discourage him. He would wait. He would be professional, and he would get that loan, if not at this bank, then somewhere else. But he wasn't going to give up. The clock on the wall ticked past 11:30 a.m. David settled in for what was becoming clear would be a very long wait. By noon, David had been waiting for 2 full hours. The leather chair that had seemed comfortable at first now felt like a punishment. He shifted his weight, trying to ease the stiffness in his back. The bank lobby had filled and emptied twice since he'd arrived. Each time the glass door swung open, David looked up with hope, only to watch another customer get immediate attention while he remained invisible. A young couple walked in, holding hands and laughing about something. They couldn't have been more than 25. The receptionist welcomed them warmly. "Hello, first-time home buyers, right? Ms. Winters has been looking forward to meeting you." Let me take you right back." David watched them disappear down the hallway, the folder on his lap feeling heavier by the minute. He checked his phone. 3 missed calls from his foreman at the construction site. 2 text messages about a delivery of materials that needed his approval. His real life was happening elsewhere while he sat here, trapped in this waiting game. An older gentleman sitting nearby had been watching. He leaned over. "Something not right about how they're treating you," he said quietly. "Been coming to this bank 30 years. Never seen anyone wait this long." David nodded slightly. "Appreciate you noticing," he said. What else could he say? That this wasn't his first time being the only black person in a room who somehow became invisible. That he prepared for this possibility by arriving early, dressing in his best suit, bringing every possible document they might ask for. His mind drifted to conversations with his father years ago. "You'll have to work twice as hard to get half as far," his dad had told him. At the time, young David had believed things would be different for his generation. Now, at 42, watching people who arrived after him get helped first, those words echoed in his mind. David stood up and approached the reception desk again. The receptionist looked up with obvious annoyance. "I've been waiting for my appointment with Ms. Winters for 2 hours now," he said, keeping his voice calm and professional. "I understand if she's busy, but perhaps someone else could help me with my loan application." The receptionist's eyes darted to a door behind her. "Ms. Winters handles all business loans personally. She'll be with you as soon as she can. Could you at least tell me how much longer the wait might be? I have a business to run." "I really couldn't say," she replied, already looking back at her computer screen. The dismissal was clear. Through the glass wall of the office, David could see Ms. Winters clearly now. She was a middle-aged woman with blonde hair pulled back tightly. She wasn't in a meeting. She was eating a salad at her desk while scrolling through her phone. David took a deep breath. Getting angry wouldn't help. He'd seen that story play out too many times before. The moment he raised his voice, he'd become the stereotype they were waiting for, the angry black man causing a scene. He wouldn't give them that satisfaction. He returned to his seat and pulled out his phone, sending a quick text to his wife. Still waiting at the bank. 2 hours now, thinking about walking out. Her reply came immediately. "Don't give them what they want. This loan is too important. Remember why you're there." She was right. This wasn't just about him. It was about the families who depended on his business, the community projects they supported, the apprenticeship program he'd started for kids from the neighborhood who couldn't afford college but had willing hands and sharp minds. A bank employee walked by, glancing at David with curiosity. David smiled politely. The employee quickly looked away. The clock on the wall showed 12:30 p.m. now. David had missed lunch. His next appointment was at 2:00 p.m. A meeting with suppliers he'd probably have to reschedule. The reality was setting in that Ms. Winters might make him wait all day, hoping he'd get frustrated and leave. What she didn't know was that David Johnson had built his entire business on patience and persistence. He'd waited 3 years to get his first major contract. He'd worked 18-hour days when necessary. If Ms. Winters thought a few hours in a waiting room would break him, she had seriously underestimated the man sitting in her lobby. David settled deeper into his chair, a new determination in his eyes. He wasn't going anywhere. 2 hours and 15 minutes. David's patience was wearing thin, but his resolve remained strong. His phone buzzed again, another text from his foreman about a problem at the Wilson project site. He needed to be there, not stuck in this bank lobby being ignored. The receptionist had started avoiding eye contact entirely now, busying herself with paperwork whenever he glanced her way. The older gentleman who had spoken to David earlier stood up to leave. He paused by David's chair. "Son, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but what's happening here isn't right. I've got half a mind to say something." David shook his head slightly. "I appreciate that, sir, but this is my battle." The man nodded with understanding. "Well, good luck to you. Don't let them make you feel small." He patted David's shoulder before walking out. David watched him go, feeling a complicated mix of gratitude and wariness. He'd been fighting versions of this battle his entire professional life. Sometimes it was subtle, being mistaken for the delivery person instead of the business owner. Other times it was blatant, like today. A young bank employee emerged from the back offices and approached the reception desk. David overheard their whispered conversation. "Is that the guy who's been waiting for Ms. Winters?" the young man asked, nodding discreetly toward David. The receptionist nodded. "Going on 2.5 hours now. Shouldn't someone help him? Mr. Taylor could handle a business loan application." The receptionist leaned closer. "Ms. Winters said she'll handle it personally. You know how she is." The young employee frowned slightly, looking uncomfortable. He glanced at David, then back at the receptionist. "It just doesn't seem right." "That's not our call to make," she replied firmly. The exchange confirmed what David had suspected all along. This wasn't about Ms. Winters being busy. This was deliberate. His hands tightened around the folder containing his business documents, creasing the edges slightly. He consciously relaxed his grip. Getting angry wouldn't help. Strategy would. David stood up, straightening his jacket. This time, he didn't approach the reception desk. Instead, he walked directly toward the offices in the back. The receptionist jumped up from her chair. "Sir, you can't go back there without an escort." David stopped and turned to her. The entire lobby had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. "I've been waiting for 2 hours and 20 minutes for my scheduled appointment. I can see Ms. Winters is in her office. I'm going to speak with her now." "Please return to the waiting area," the receptionist insisted, her voice rising. "Security will be called if necessary." David didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Call them. I'll wait right here. And when they come, I'll ask them to explain why someone with a scheduled appointment has been made to wait while others who arrived later were helped immediately. I'm sure the local news would find that interesting too." A door opened. A middle-aged woman with sharp features appeared. Ms. Winters. She looked annoyed, but there was something else in her expression. Surprise? Uncertainty? "What seems to be the problem here?" she asked, addressing the receptionist, not David. "Ms. Winters," David said before the receptionist could answer. "I'm David Johnson. I had an appointment with you at 10 a.m. regarding a business loan for Johnson Construction." Ms. Winters finally looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Johnson, I apologize for the wait. We've had an unusually busy morning." "I've been watching people who arrived after me get helped immediately," David replied calmly. "That doesn't seem like a scheduling issue. That seems like a different kind of issue entirely." The color drained slightly from Ms. Winters' face. The lobby remained silent. Everyone was listening now. Other customers, bank employees, even a security guard hovering uncertainly near the entrance. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding," Ms. Winters said, her voice tight. "Why don't we discuss this in my office?" David stood his ground. "I'd like an explanation first. Why was I made to wait when others weren't?" Ms. Winters' eyes darted around the lobby, aware of all the witnesses. "As I said, it was a busy morning. Appointments get prioritized based on various factors." "What factors would those be?" David asked. "Because from where I'm standing, there seems to be only one factor at play." The implication hung in the air. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The tension was thick enough to touch. And then the front doors of the bank swung open. The bank's glass doors swung open, letting in a stream of bright sunlight that momentarily blinded everyone in the lobby. 3 people walked in, 2 men and a woman, all dressed in expensive-looking suits that screamed importance. They were deep in conversation, laughing comfortably with one another in the way people do when they've known each other for years. The first man was tall with silver hair and the confident stride of someone used to being in charge. The second was shorter with an athletic build and stylish glasses. The woman walked between them, her dark skin contrasting beautifully with her cream-colored suit, her natural hair styled in a professional twist. The effect on the bank staff was immediate and almost comical. The receptionist's eyes widened. A nearby loan officer who had been pretending not to watch the confrontation suddenly straightened his tie. Even the security guard stood a little taller. Ms. Winters' transformation was the most dramatic of all. The cold, dismissive expression she had worn while addressing David melted away, replaced by a beaming smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mr. Reid, Mr. Patel, Dr. Washington, what a wonderful surprise." She practically sang the words. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow's board meeting." The silver-haired man, Mr. Reid, gave a casual wave. We finished our lunch early and thought we'd stop by. Nothing like a surprise visit to see how things are really running. His eyes took in the scene. David standing tall in his suit, folder in hand, Ms. Winters looking flustered, and the silent audience of customers and employees watching it all unfold. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone used to being in charge. Before Ms. Winters could answer, the woman in the cream suit stopped in her tracks. She stared at David with widening eyes. "David? David Johnson, is that you?" David blinked in surprise. He looked more carefully at the woman, and recognition dawned on his face. "Dr. Washington. Lisa Washington." She broke into a genuine smile and walked over to him, arms outstretched. "It's been what? 3 years?" "Not since the East Side Community Center project." David accepted her hug, his posture relaxing slightly for the first time since he'd entered the bank. 4 years, actually. How have you been?" "Busy as ever. Hospital work keeps me running, and now these board meetings." She gestured to her companions. "But what are you doing here? And why do you look like you're about to go 12 rounds with our bank manager?" Ms. Winters laughed nervously. "Just a small misunderstanding about scheduling. Nothing to worry about." "Actually," David said, his voice steady, "I've been waiting for my scheduled 10 a.m. appointment for over 2 hours while watching people who came in after me get helped immediately." Lisa's warm smile faded. She looked at her watch, then back at David. 2 hours? For a scheduled appointment. The other board members had moved closer now, listening to the conversation. Mr. Reed's eyebrows drew together. "Patricia," he addressed Ms. Winters by her first name, "is this true?" Ms. Winters' smile became increasingly strained. "As I was explaining to Mr. Johnson, we've had an unusually busy morning. Some appointments take priority based on..." "Based on what?" The second man, Mr. Patel, spoke up for the first time. His voice was quiet but sharp. "I'm quite interested to hear about these priorities." "Do you know who this man is?" Lisa asked, placing a hand on David's shoulder. She didn't wait for an answer. "This is David Johnson of Johnson Construction. His company renovated the East Side Community Center under budget and ahead of schedule. They're handling the new pediatric wing at my hospital. David employs over 20 people from our community and runs an apprenticeship program for disadvantaged youth." Mr. Reed's expression changed from concern to interest. "Johnson Construction? You did that beautiful renovation on the historic Phillips Building downtown, didn't you?" "My wife and I attended the reopening gala. Stunning craftsmanship." David nodded, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the sudden shift in atmosphere. "Thank you, sir. That was one of our most challenging projects, preserving the historical elements while bringing everything up to modern code." Ms. Winters looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. The receptionist had suddenly found something extremely interesting to study on her computer screen. "Patricia," Mr. Reed said, his voice calm but cold, "I think we need to have a conversation in your office. Now." He turned to David with a completely different tone. "Mr. Johnson, I sincerely apologize for your experience today. Would you be willing to join us as well? I believe we have some matters to discuss." Ms. Winters' office felt much smaller with 5 people in it. David sat in one of the visitor chairs, his folder of business documents still in his lap. Dr. Washington took the seat beside him, while Mr. Reed and Mr. Patel remained standing. Ms. Winters perched nervously behind her desk, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. "Let me make sure I understand the situation correctly," Mr. Reed began, his tone measured but firm. "Mr. Johnson had an appointment scheduled for 10 a.m. It's now." He checked his watch, nearly 12:45, and he still hasn't been seen. Meanwhile, other clients who arrived after him were helped immediately. Is that an accurate summary? Ms. Winters shifted in her chair. "There were extenuating circumstances." "What circumstances?" Mr. Patel interrupted. "Please be specific." The bank manager opened and closed her mouth, searching for words. "Well, we had several priority clients." "Define priority," Dr. Washington said. Her voice was calm, but had an edge of steel to it. The silence that followed was deafening. Ms. Winters glanced at the door as if considering making a run for it. David sat quietly, watching it all unfold. Part of him felt a grim satisfaction seeing Ms. Winters squirm, but mostly he just felt tired. This wasn't his first experience with prejudice and wouldn't be his last. What made this time different was having witnesses who wouldn't ignore it. "I think," Mr. Reid said finally, "that we all understand what happened here." He turned to David. "Mr. Johnson, on behalf of Riverview Community Bank, I want to offer my sincere apologies for how you've been treated today. This is not what our institution stands for." David nodded, accepting the apology but not quite ready to let go of his frustration. "With all due respect, Mr. Reid, I think it might be exactly what your institution stands for, at least on a day-to-day basis. I doubt I'm the first person to experience this kind of treatment here." Dr. Washington leaned forward. "You're absolutely right, David. And that's precisely why we need to address this head-on." She looked at her fellow board members. "This isn't just about one incident. It's about the culture we've allowed to develop." Mr. Patel nodded in agreement. "Ms. Winters, how many business loans has Riverview approved for minority-owned businesses in the last year?" Ms. Winters fumbled with her computer. I would need to pull those statistics." "I'd like those numbers on my desk by tomorrow morning," Mr. Reid said, "along with comparative approval rates broken down by demographic groups." David watched the exchange with growing interest. He hadn't expected this level of accountability from the board members. Most times when he faced discrimination, people in power found ways to explain it away or minimize it. These three seemed genuinely disturbed by what had happened. "Mr. Johnson," Mr. Patel turned to him, "you came here today about a business loan, correct? Perhaps you could tell us about your company and what you're looking to do." For the first time since arriving at the bank, David felt himself relax slightly. This was familiar territory, talking about his business, his plans, his vision. He opened his folder and pulled out the business plan he prepared. "Johnson Construction has been operating for 15 years, he began. "We currently employ 27 people full-time, and we're looking to expand. The loan would help us purchase additional equipment and hire 15 more workers from the community." As David spoke, he could see genuine interest in their faces. Mr. Reid asked insightful questions about cash flow projections. Mr. Patel inquired about current contracts and future opportunities. Dr. Washington smiled with pride when David mentioned the apprenticeship program. "This is precisely the kind of business Riverview should be supporting," Mr. Reid said when David finished. He turned to Ms. Winters, whose face had gone pale. "Don't you agree, Patricia?" "Yes, of course," she mumbled. "Then I have a proposal," Mr. Reid continued. "Mr. Johnson's loan application will be expedited and reviewed by our Executive Loan Committee, which I chair, rather than going through the standard channels. I believe we can have an answer for you by the end of the week." He handed David his business card. "My direct line is on there. If you encounter any further obstacles, please call me immediately." David accepted the card, surprised by this turn of events. "Thank you, Mr. Reid." Dr. Washington touched his arm gently. "And I hope you'll consider joining our Community Advisory Board, David. We clearly need more diverse perspectives to help guide this institution forward." For a moment, David was speechless. He had walked into this bank expecting, at best, to be treated fairly enough to get his loan. He had not expected to be invited into the inner circle. "I'd be honored to consider it," he said finally. Ms. Winters' phone rang, breaking the moment. She reached for it, seeming relieved by the interruption. "Don't answer that," Mr. Reid said sharply. "We're not finished here." He turned back to David. "Would you mind waiting outside for a few minutes? I believe the three of us need to have a private conversation with Ms. Winters about the future of her employment at this bank." David nodded and stood up. As he walked to the door, he could feel Ms. Winters' eyes on his back. He didn't look back. David stepped out of Ms. Winters' office, closing the door quietly behind him. The bank lobby had returned to its normal hustle and bustle, but he noticed how people glanced his way, curious about what had happened behind closed doors. The receptionist couldn't meet his eyes when he walked past her desk. He checked his phone. 3 missed calls from his wife, 5 text messages from his foreman. Real life was still happening outside these walls. He stepped into a quiet corner to call his wife first. "Hey, honey," he said when she answered. "Sorry I didn't call sooner." "David, what happened? Did you get the loan? Are you still at the bank?" Her voice was full of concern. "It's a long story," he replied, watching as bank employees hurried past, pretending not to eavesdrop. "Let's just say things took an unexpected turn. I'll tell you everything when I get home." After promising to call his foreman next, David ended the call and leaned against the wall, finally allowing himself to feel the emotions he'd been holding back all morning: the frustration, the anger, the humiliation, and now, strangely, a sense of vindication. His thoughts were interrupted by raised voices coming from Ms. Winter's office. Though he couldn't make out the exact words, the tone was unmistakable. Someone was getting a serious dressing down. 20 minutes later, the office door opened. Mr. Reed emerged first, his face composed but stern. Mr. Patel followed, checking something on his phone. Dr. Washington came last, shaking her head slightly. Ms. Winters remained inside, visible through the glass walls, sitting at her desk with her head in her hands. The three board members approached David, who straightened up immediately. "Thank you for your patience, Mr. Johnson," Mr. Reed said. "I believe we've made our expectations clear to Ms. Winters." "What happens now?" David asked, genuinely curious about the outcome. Mr. Patel put his phone away. "Ms. Winters has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation into her lending practices." His voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes showed genuine concern. "We'll be reviewing all loan applications processed under her supervision for the past 3 years, with particular attention to applications from minority business owners." "Will that make a difference?" David asked. He'd seen this pattern before. A slap on the wrist followed by business as usual once the attention died down. Dr. Washington's expression was determined. "It will this time. I promise you that." She handed David her business card. "I'd like you to help us make sure of it, that advisory board position I mentioned. We need people like you who won't stay silent when they see injustice." David took the card, turning it over in his hands thoughtfully. "I'll think about it." Mr. Reid cleared his throat. "In the meantime, we've made arrangements for you to meet with Thomas Chen, our VP of Commercial Lending, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. He'll handle your loan application personally." He extended his hand. "And I want to thank you, Mr. Johnson." David shook his hand, surprised. "Thank me? For what?" "For maintaining your dignity in a situation where many would have lost their temper. For giving us the opportunity to see what was happening in our bank." Mr. Reed's grip was firm, his gaze direct. It shouldn't take a coincidental visit from board members for a qualified business owner to be treated with respect. As they walked together toward the bank entrance, David noticed other customers watching. The older gentleman who had spoken to him earlier caught his eye and gave a subtle nod of approval. Outside, the afternoon sun felt warm on David's face. Dr. Washington touched his arm lightly. "I mean it about the advisory board, David. The bank needs to change, and change happens from within." She looked back at the building. "What happened to you today? It's not an isolated incident. It's happening every day in banks, in stores, in offices across the country." "I know," David said quietly. "That's why I didn't just walk out, even after 2 hours. Because walking out is what they expect." Mr. Patel joined them. "The meeting tomorrow with Mr. Chen. He's one of our best. He'll treat your application fairly." "And if he doesn't?" David asked, raising an eyebrow. Dr. Washington smiled. "Then you call me directly, and we'll have another conversation like the one we just had with Ms. Winters." As David watched the 3 board members walk toward their cars, he felt something he hadn't expected when he'd arrived at the bank that morning. Hope, not just for his loan approval, but for something bigger. Maybe, just maybe, this was how real change began. Not with grand gestures or public pronouncements, but with people in positions of power finally opening their eyes to what had been happening right under their noses all along. David pulled out his phone to call his foreman. He had a business to run after all. And now it looked like that business might be growing sooner than he'd expected. 1 week later, David sat in the office of Thomas Chen, VP of Commercial Lending at Riverview Community Bank. The difference between this meeting and his previous experience couldn't have been more striking. Mr. Chen had welcomed him with a firm handshake and genuine smile. Coffee had been offered immediately. Most importantly, David's business plan had been reviewed thoroughly and professionally. "Well, Mr. Johnson," Mr. Chen said, closing the folder containing David's loan application, "I'm pleased to inform you that your loan has been approved." He slid a document across the desk. "These are the terms we're offering. Take your time to review them." David scanned the paper, his eyebrows rising slightly. The interest rate was better than he'd hoped for, and the repayment terms were flexible enough to accommodate the seasonal nature of the construction business. "These terms are very competitive," David said, looking up from the document. Mr. Chen nodded. "They reflect the strength of your business plan and your company's excellent track record. This is simply good business for the bank, nothing more, nothing less." That last comment wasn't lost on David. This was how it should have been from the beginning. His application judged on its merits, not on the color of his skin. "Thank you," David said, extending his hand across the desk. "When can we get started?" "The funds can be in your business account by next Monday," Mr. Chen replied, shaking David's hand. "And Mr. Johnson, I want you to know that what happened last week, that's not who we aim to be as an institution." David appreciated the sentiment, though he knew that actions would speak louder than words in the long run. As he left Mr. Chen's office, David noticed changes in the bank already. New posters in the lobby announced community outreach programs and small business workshops. The security guard who had hovered uncertainly during his confrontation with Ms. Winters now greeted him with a respectful nod. At the front entrance, he was surprised to see Dr. Washington waiting, chatting with a young bank employee. "David," she called, spotting him. "I hoped I might catch you here. Do you have a few minutes?" They walked to a small cafe across the street from the bank. Over coffee, Dr. Washington filled him in on the changes that had occurred in just 1 week. "Ms. Winters is officially gone," she said. "The review of her lending decisions revealed a pattern exactly like what you experienced. Loan applications from minority business owners were delayed, scrutinized more heavily, or outright rejected at rates significantly higher than other applications." David wasn't surprised, but having it confirmed still stung. How many people lost opportunities because of her? "Too many," Dr. Washington sighed. "But we're working to fix it. The board has approved a new policy requiring regular audits of all lending decisions to check for bias. We're also implementing mandatory training for all staff." She paused, stirring her coffee. "But the most important change is the one you inspired directly." "What's that?" "We're establishing a community reinvestment program specifically targeting underserved neighborhoods. $5 million in loans earmarked for minority-owned businesses in the next year alone." Her eyes met his. "And we need someone to chair the oversight committee for this program, someone who understands these businesses and will ensure the money actually reaches them." David raised an eyebrow. "Are you offering me a job, Lisa?" She laughed. "More like community service. It would be 1 meeting a month, reviewing applications and lending decisions. A chance to make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to others." David thought about it. His schedule was already packed, especially with the expansion his new loan would fund. But this was bigger than him. This was about changing a system that had been working against people like him for generations. "I'll do it," he said finally. "But I want to bring in others too, people who've been turned down for loans, who've faced the same barriers I have. Their voices need to be heard too." Dr. Washington smiled. "That's exactly why we need you." 3 months later, David stood in front of his newly expanded workshop. 2 new trucks with the Johnson Construction logo gleamed in the parking lot. Inside, 15 new employees, many from the neighborhood where David had grown up, were learning the trade that would provide them with stable incomes and valuable skills. His phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Dr. Washington. "Committee meeting approved 12 new loans today. Change is happening. Thank you." David smiled as he typed his reply. "Thank you for listening when it mattered." As he slipped his phone back into his pocket, a memory from that day at the bank flashed through his mind. The 2 hours of waiting, the humiliation, the anger. It still bothered him, as it should. Some experiences shouldn't be forgotten, even when they lead to positive change. His foreman called out to him from the workshop entrance. "Boss, we need you to sign off on the Wilson project modifications." David nodded and walked toward the building. Life moved forward. His business was growing. And thanks to that difficult day at the bank, other black business owners might have an easier path forward than he did. Sometimes the right people walking through the door at the right moment could change everything. But it wouldn't have mattered if David hadn't been willing to stand his ground first. That was the real lesson, knowing your worth and refusing to be treated as less, even when the whole system seemed designed to make you give up and walk away. He hadn't walked away, and now things were changing, one loan, one business, one life at a time.